Sophia once had dreams bigger than the tiny room she called home. She worked day and night at a textile factory in Lagos, stitching clothes for people she would never meet, earning barely enough to survive. But when her mother fell ill and the bills began to pile up, those dreams started to fade like old fabric left too long in the sun. She lost hope. She lost her smile. Left alone to carry the weight of her family's struggles, working endless shifts just to afford medicine and rent, she never imagined that one simple act of kindness would change her life forever. What did she do that caught the attention of a mysterious stranger? And what happened next that left her trembling in disbelief? Sit back and find out as we uncover the shocking story of Sophia and the billionaire in disguise, a story you won't forget. Once upon a time in the heart of Lagos, a city that buzzed with life from dawn till dusk, where the streets were filled with traders shouting their prices and cars honking in endless traffic, there lived a young woman named Sophia Martinez. Unlike most girls her age who were chasing university degrees or planning their futures, Sophia was chasing survival. Her father had left when she was just a child, disappearing one night without explanation, without goodbye, leaving behind only broken promises and unpaid debts. Her mother, Grace Martinez, had raised her alone, working as a cleaner in different homes across the city, scrubbing floors and washing clothes for families who barely acknowledged her existence. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and for Sophia, that was enough. Every morning, Grace would wake up before sunrise, when the city was still wrapped in darkness and the roosters had just begun to crow. She would tie her faded wrapper around her waist, splash cold water on her face, and prepare a small breakfast of bread and tea for Sophia before heading out to work. And every morning before she left, she would hold Sophia's face in her rough, work-worn hands and tell her, "My daughter, education is the only thing that can change our story. Study hard, work hard, and never let anyone tell you that you're less than you are because of where we live or how little we have." They lived in a face-me-I-face-you compound in Ajegunle, one of Lagos's most crowded neighborhoods, where 10 families shared one bathroom and one kitchen, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors' conversations, their arguments, their laughter, and their tears. The ceiling leaked during the rainy season, and they had to place buckets around the room to catch the water. The air was thick with the smell of cooking food, burning trash, and open gutters. But inside that small room with peeling paint and a cement floor, Sophia grew up learning values that money couldn't buy. Her mother taught her kindness, honesty, resilience, and the fierce belief that no matter how little you have, you can still help someone else. Sophia loved her mother deeply. With every fiber of her being, she studied hard in school, always coming first in her class, spending hours poring over borrowed textbooks by candlelight when there was no electricity. She tutored younger children in the neighborhood for free, helping them with their homework under the shade of a tree, and she dreamed, oh, how she dreamed, of the day she would become a nurse and take care of her mother the way her mother had taken care of her all these years. By the time she turned 18, Sophia's hard work had paid off. She had earned a scholarship to study nursing at Lagos State University. The day the letter arrived, her mother held it in her trembling hands and read it over and over again. Tears streaming down her weathered face, she pulled Sophia into a tight embrace and whispered, "You see? God has not forgotten us. He has been watching. You will be great, my daughter, you will be great. You will wear a white uniform and help people. You will make our family proud." Sophia worked even harder at the university. She attended every single class, never missing a lecture even when she was sick. She studied late into the night, using candlelight when there was no electricity, memorizing medical terms and procedures. She volunteered at the university clinic to gain experience, assisting nurses, cleaning equipment, and learning everything she could. Her professors noticed her dedication. Her classmates admired her. She was determined to make her mother proud, to prove that their sacrifices had not been in vain. But life, as it often does, had other plans, and fate, as always, had a different path in mind, one that Sophia could never have anticipated. One evening during Sophia's second year at the university, she returned home for the weekend to visit her mother. She had saved a little money from tutoring some students and wanted to buy her mother something nice. Maybe a new wrapper or a bag of rice, but when she arrived at their compound, she found neighbors gathered outside their door, whispering in hushed, worried tones. Her heart began to race. "What's wrong? What happened?" Sophia asked, her voice rising in panic. Mama Nika gently touched her shoulder and said, "Your mother collapsed while cleaning at Madame Kioma's house. She's very weak. She needs a hospital." Panic gripped Sophia as she ran inside and saw her mother, pale and trembling on their thin mattress. "Mama, please don't leave me," she cried, clutching her cold hand. Grace managed a faint smile. "I'm fine, my daughter, just tired." "No, Mama, we're going to the hospital now." With neighbors' help, Sophia got her onto an Okada and raced to the nearest hospital. But instead of care, they were met with indifference. The nurse barely looked up. "Pay a deposit before admission," she said coldly. "Please," Sophia begged through tears. "My mother is dying. I'll find the money, just help her." But the nurse repeated without emotion, "No deposit, no treatment." Sophia's heart shattered as she realized no one cared. Her world collapsed right there in that hospital hallway. Finally, after what felt like hours, a kind nurse named Eliana took pity on them. She was younger than the others, with gentle eyes and a soft voice. "Come," she said quietly. "Let me see what I can do." Eliana managed to get Grace admitted into a bed in the crowded general ward. The tests were run, and the results came back quickly. Grace had developed a severe kidney infection that had gone untreated for months. The infection had spread. Her kidneys were failing. The treatment would be intensive, requiring strong antibiotics, possible dialysis, and weeks of hospital care. "How much?" Sophia asked the doctor, her voice barely a whisper, dreading the answer. The doctor, a tired-looking man with graying hair, sighed. "For the full treatment, medications, dialysis sessions, and hospital stay, you're looking at about 350,000 naira, maybe more, depending on how she responds." 350,000 naira. The words echoed in Sophia's head like a death sentence. To her, it might as well have been 3 million. She didn't have 3,000, let alone 350,000. She sat beside her mother's hospital bed that night, holding her hand, trying desperately not to cry. But the tears came anyway. Hot, bitter tears that burned her cheeks and blurred her vision. "Don't cry, my daughter," her mother whispered weakly, barely able to keep her eyes open. "God will provide. He always does." But Sophia didn't know how. She didn't know where the money would come from. She didn't have rich relatives. She didn't have connections. She had nothing, and just like that, her world began to crumble piece by piece, like a sandcastle washed away by the tide. She had to make a choice: stay in school and watch her mother die, or drop out and find a way to save her. And for Sophia, there was no choice at all. Without hesitation, without even telling her professors, she withdrew from the university, packing her books, her notes, her dreams, and leaving them all behind. She didn't tell her mother at first because she knew it would break her heart. But there was no other way. She began to search for work, anything that would pay. She applied at banks, supermarkets, restaurants, clinics, and pharmacies. But everywhere she went, they asked for experience she didn't have or connections she didn't possess. Some employers looked her up and down and made inappropriate comments, suggesting she could get the job if she was friendly with them, if she was willing to cooperate. But Sophia refused every single time. She would rather starve than compromise her dignity. She would rather die than betray the values her mother had instilled in her. Finally, after weeks of searching, of walking from one end of Lagos to the other, her feet blistered and her hope nearly gone, she found a job at a textile factory in Ikeya. The pay was small, barely 25,000 naira a month, but it was survival. She was hired on the spot because they were desperate for workers and didn't ask too many questions. The work was brutal, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, standing at a sewing machine in a hot, cramped room filled with the deafening noise of dozens of other machines. Her job was to stitch sleeves onto shirts, hundreds of them every day, until her fingers cramped and her back screamed in pain. The factory was a nightmare, the air thick with fabric dust that made her cough, the supervisors yelling constantly. The breaks short and infrequent, but Sophia didn't complain, she couldn't afford to. Every month she paid her mother's hospital bills bit by bit, bought the medications, expensive pills that cost more than her weekly salary, paid the rent on their tiny room so they wouldn't be thrown out onto the streets. And whatever was left, which was almost nothing, she used to feed herself. Most days, she ate only once, a small plate of rice or gari, sometimes with a tiny bit of stew if she was lucky. And some days she ate nothing at all, drinking only water to fill the emptiness in her stomach. She grew thinner, her clothes already worn and faded, hung loose on her shrinking frame. Her eyes, once bright with hope and dreams, now looked tired, hollow, haunted, the light inside her slowly dying. But she never stopped, she never gave up. She couldn't, because her mother was still alive, still fighting, and that meant Sophia had to fight too. The other workers at the factory noticed her. Some admired her quiet strength and determination. Others pitied her, whispering about the girl who never smiled, who never joined them for lunch, who always looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, but no one really understood. No one knew that every night, when she finally dragged herself back to their empty room, she cried herself to sleep, whispering desperate prayers that God would heal her mother and give her the strength to keep going. Just one more day, one evening. After an especially long and exhausting shift, Sophia clocked out and began her walk home. Her supervisor had made her stay late to finish an urgent order, and now it was already dark. The streets were dimly lit, and the usual chaos of Lagos had quieted into a low hum of nighttime activity. She was tired, bone-deep tired, and hungry so. Hungry her stomach cramped, and her feet hurt from standing all day on the hard concrete floor. All she wanted was to get home, maybe boil some water for gari, check on her mother who had been discharged but was still very weak, and collapse into bed. As she walked past a small roadside shop, one of those tiny kiosks that sold everything, from biscuits to phone cards, she noticed a man sitting on the pavement outside. He was barefoot, his clothes dirty and torn, barely more than rags hanging off his thin frame. His hair was wild and unkempt, and his face was covered in dust and grime. People walked past him without a second glance, their faces turned away, their steps quick as if poverty might be contagious. Some tossed coins at him carelessly, not even bothering to look, as if he were a dog begging for scraps. The coins landed near his feet, and he bent slowly, painfully, to pick them up one by one, as if each movement caused him unbearable pain. Sophia stopped, something in her chest tightening, a familiar ache. She didn't know why, but she felt an overwhelming sense of sadness and anger. Anger at the world, anger at how people could walk past another human being as if they were invisible. As if their suffering didn't matter, as if they weren't even real. She stood there for a long moment, watching him, watching the way his hands shook as he picked up the coins, watching the defeat in his posture. And suddenly, she saw herself. She saw her mother. She saw every person who had ever been ignored, dismissed, forgotten. Then, without thinking, without calculating the cost, she walked over to the shop and bought 2 cups of hot tea and 2 loaves of bread. It cost her 400 naira, almost half of the money she had left for the week, money she needed for transport, for food, for everything, but she didn't care. In that moment, she didn't care at all. She walked over to the man and sat down beside him on the cold pavement, right there on the dirty ground, not caring about her clothes or what people might think. He looked up at her, startled, his eyes wide with surprise and confusion, like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "Here," she said softly, her voice gentle, handing him 1 cup of tea and 1 loaf of bread. "It's not much, but it's something. You must be hungry." The man stared at her. He didn't move, he didn't speak, he just stared as if he couldn't believe what was happening, as if this might be some kind of cruel joke. "Please," Sophia said, smiling gently despite her exhaustion. "Eat, don't be shy. We're just 2 people sharing a meal." Slowly, hesitantly, The man took the tea and bread from her hands. His fingers were rough, calloused, scarred. He looked down at the food, then back at her, still speechless, his eyes glistening. Sophia unwrapped her own bread and took a sip of her tea, the warmth spreading through her empty stomach, and for a moment, just a moment, she felt a little better. "My name is Sophia," she said, as if they were old friends meeting after a long time apart. "What's your name?" The man hesitated, his throat working as if he'd forgotten how to speak. Then, in a quiet, hoarse voice that sounded like it hadn't been used in days, he said, "Stephen." "Stephen," Sophia repeated, smiling warmly. "That's a nice name. Nice to meet you, Stephen." They sat in silence for a while, eating their bread and drinking their tea. Sophia didn't ask him questions. She didn't pry into his life or his circumstances. She didn't offer pity or judgment. She just sat with him, treating him like a human being, like he mattered, like he was worthy of kindness. After a while, she glanced down at his feet. They were bare, dirty and covered in cuts, bruises, and what looked like old scars. Some of the wounds still raw and fresh, and her heart ached at the sight. "Stephen," she said softly, her voice full of concern, "you don't have any shoes." He looked down at his feet as if seeing them for the first time and nodded slowly, shame crossing his face. "I lost them a while ago. Someone stole them while I was sleeping." Sophia didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at his feet, thinking. Then she stood up, brushed the crumbs off her skirt, and without a word she walked away. Stephen watched her go, his heart sinking, thinking she had left, that she had done her good deed and moved on with her life like everyone else. But a few minutes later, she returned, slightly out of breath, holding a small plastic bag. She knelt down in front of him right there on the dirty pavement and pulled out a pair of simple black sneakers. They weren't new, they weren't expensive or fancy, but they were clean and in good condition. "Here," she said, placing them in front of him. "These should fit. I just bought them from the shop around the corner." Stephen's eyes widened in shock. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I can't accept this. This is too much. You don't have to." "You can. And you will," Sophia said firmly, though her voice was still kind and gentle. She picked up one of the shoes and, before he could protest further, gently helped him put it on his foot, then picked up the other and did the same, tying the laces carefully. Stephen looked down at his feet, now covered in shoes, and tears began to fill his eyes, spilling over and running down his dirty cheeks, leaving clean tracks through the grime. He looked up at Sophia, his voice breaking. Why? Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me. I'm nobody. I'm nothing." Sophia smiled, a sad, tired smile that held years of pain and struggle. "Because someone once told me that no matter how little you have, you can still help someone else, and because you're not nobody, Stephen. You're somebody. You're a human being, and you deserve kindness. Everyone does, no matter what." Stephen didn't say anything. He couldn't. He just stared at her, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't name: gratitude, shame, hope, disbelief, all of it at once, crushing his chest. Sophia stood up and dusted off her hands. "Take care of yourself, Stephen," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine care. "And please, try to find somewhere safe to sleep tonight. It's getting cold." Then she turned and walked away into the night, her stomach still growling because she had just spent the last of her money she desperately needed on tea, bread and shoes for a complete stranger. That night, Sophia went home hungry. She didn't eat, she couldn't, there was nothing left. But as she lay on her thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to her mother's labored breathing in the darkness, she felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She had done something good, something right, something her mother would be proud of. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Maybe that was all that mattered in this cruel and different world. What Sophia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that the man she had helped wasn't a beggar at all. His name was Stephen Archer, and he was one of the wealthiest men in Nigeria. He owned Archer Tech Holdings, a massive conglomerate with tech companies, real estate across Africa, investments in Europe and America, and assets worth billions. He had everything money could buy. But he was also a man on a very specific mission. For years, Stephen had been planning to launch a massive charity foundation to help the poor and vulnerable across Nigeria. He had the money, he had the resources, he had the infrastructure. But he had one critical problem: he didn't trust people. He had been betrayed too many times, used and manipulated by those who claimed to care but only wanted his money. Business partners had stolen from him, friends had lied to him. Even family members had turned on him when he refused to fund their extravagant lifestyles. He had learned the hard way that in a world driven by money, genuine kindness was rare, almost extinct. And so, before launching his foundation, before putting billions of naira into helping others, he decided to do something radical. Something that would either restore his faith in humanity or confirm his worst fears. He disguised himself as a homeless man and spent weeks on the streets of Lagos, living like the people he intended to help, testing humanity. Testing to see if kindness still existed, if compassion was still real, if anyone would help someone who had absolutely nothing to offer in return. For days and weeks, people ignored him, walking past him like he was invisible, like he was part of the scenery. Some cursed at him, calling him lazy and useless. Some threw coins at him like he was a dog, not even slowing their steps. Others spat insults, telling him to get a job, to stop being a burden on society. And a few young men even kicked him as they passed, laughing at his pain. No one sat with him, no one spoke to him like he was human, no one asked his name. No one looked him in the eye, no one cared until Sophia. When she sat beside him, bought him food with money she clearly didn't have, and gave him shoes, kneeling to help him wear them herself, treating him with dignity and respect, Stephen was stunned into silence. He watched her walk away that night, disappearing into the darkness, and for the first time in years, he felt something shift deep inside his chest: hope, faith, the belief that good people still existed in this world, that humanity wasn't completely lost. The next day, Stephen returned to his real life. He shaved his beard, showered in his marble bathroom, put on one of his expensive custom-tailored suits, and went back to being the powerful CEO everyone knew and feared. But he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia, her face, her smile, her kindness, the way she had looked at him like he mattered. He immediately called his head of security and personal assistant. "I need you to find someone for me," he said. "A young woman named Sophia. She works somewhere in Ikea. Find out everything about her. Where she works, where she lives, what her story is. I want a full report by tomorrow." His team was efficient, and within 24 hours they had gathered everything. When Stephen sat in his office and read through the file about Sophia's life, her mother's illness, how she had sacrificed her education to save her, how she worked 12-hour shifts for almost nothing and went hungry most days, his heart broke, and his respect for her grew even deeper. She had almost nothing, yet she had given to someone she thought had even less. A few days later, Sophia was at the factory, stitching a sleeve onto a blue shirt, her fingers moving mechanically, her mind elsewhere, when her stern supervisor, Mr. Andrew, called her into his office. Her heart sank instantly. Panic flooded her as she thought she had done something wrong. Maybe made a mistake or worked too slowly. Maybe she was about to be fired. "Sophia, someone wants to see you," Mr. Andrews said, looking puzzled. "Who?" she asked nervously, her voice shaking. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know," he replied, "but he's waiting in the manager's office. Important man, apparently. Go now, don't keep him waiting." Sophia's hands trembled as she walked toward the manager's office, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. When she opened the door and stepped inside, her breath caught in her throat. There, sitting in a leather chair behind a large desk, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than she earned in a year, was Stephen, but he looked nothing like the man she had met on the street. He looked clean, powerful, polished, confident. Sophia froze in the doorway, her mouth hanging open. "Stephen?" He stood up slowly and smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Hello, Sophia." She didn't understand, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. What are you doing here?" I don't understand. How did you look. Stephen walked toward her slowly, calm and deliberate. "Please sit down." She sat across from him, her legs shaking, her thoughts spinning in confusion and fear. Was this a trick? Some kind of cruel test? Stephen took a deep breath, his expression now serious. "Sophia, I need to tell you the truth. That night you helped me, I wasn't really homeless. I wasn't a beggar. I was testing people, testing humanity. I wanted to see if anyone would still show kindness to someone who had nothing to offer in return. And you did." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "My name is Stephen Archer," he continued, watching her closely. "I own Archer Tech Holdings. I'm a businessman, a very wealthy one. And I've been planning for years to start a charity foundation to help people across Nigeria, people who are struggling, people like you. But I didn't know who to trust. I've been betrayed too many times. Until I met you." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. It felt unreal, like a dream she couldn't wake from. Stephen's voice softened but stayed steady. "You spent your last money on me, Sophia. You gave me shoes, sat beside me and treated me like I mattered. Then I learned about your mother, how you dropped out of school to save her, how you work yourself to exhaustion every day just to survive. You're exactly the kind of person I've been searching for, honest, selfless and kind." Sophia's hands trembled. Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Stephen smiled gently. "Because I want you to lead my new NGO, the Archer Hope Foundation. I need someone who truly understands struggle and compassion, and that person is you. And I'll also take care of your mother's full medical treatment and sponsor your return to university so you can finish your nursing degree." Sophia broke down completely, sobbing as years of pain, fear, and exhaustion melted away. Stephen knelt beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You gave when you had nothing," he said softly. "Now let me give you everything." In that single moment, Sophia's world shifted, her darkness lifted, her burdens faded, and hope returned to her heart brighter than ever. She accepted the position with deep gratitude, and within weeks her mother received the best medical care, regaining her health and joy. Sophia returned to Lagos State University, completed her nursing degree with honors, and began working alongside Stephen to grow the Archer Hope Foundation, which soon helped thousands of struggling families across Nigeria. As they worked side by side, visiting orphanages, building schools, and organizing charity projects, something deeper than respect blossomed between them. Stephen admired her compassion and integrity, while Sophia saw beyond his wealth to the lonely man searching for hope again. Together, they found healing in helping others and in each other. One quiet evening, after visiting a newly built orphanage in Ogun State, Stephen asked Sophia to stay behind while the rest of the team left. They sat together in his office, overlooking the glittering lights of Lagos stretching endlessly below like a sea of stars. "Sophia," Stephen began softly, his voice trembling. "There's something important I need to tell you." Her heart quickened as she met his gaze, sensing the weight of his words. "I've met countless people in my life, rich, powerful, famous, but none of them ever made me feel the way you do. You remind me that goodness still exists, that love is real, that humanity is worth believing in. And I've fallen completely in love with you, Sophia." Her breath caught as he reached into his pocket and revealed a small velvet box. Inside, a simple diamond ring glowed under the soft office light. "Sophia Martinez," he said, his voice breaking. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life loving and honoring you?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she whispered a trembling yes. Their wedding was intimate and full of grace. Her mother, now healthy and radiant, wept with joy as Sophia walked down the aisle in a simple white gown, while Stephen, once a man who had lost all faith in love, stood at the altar in tears, knowing he had found the rarest treasure of all, a woman with a heart of pure gold who loved him not for his wealth, but for who he truly was. What lesson did this story leave you with? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching till the end. God bless you. And I can't wait to see you in the next one.